The notification sound on my phone still makes my chest tighten even though it's been 3 years. Every ping, every buzz, my body remembers before my mind catches up. Some wounds don't heal, they just learn to hide better. I'm Owen Caldwell, and I destroyed the man who was once closer to me than my own brother. Not with my fists, not with violence, not with anything so crude or obvious. I used the only thing I truly understood, the invisible architecture that holds our digital world together. Because when you know how systems work, you know exactly where to make them fail. This isn't a confession that brings me peace. It's the story of how friendship can rot from the inside out, how trust can become the sharpest blade, and how revenge, even when it's perfect, even when it's complete, leaves you standing in the wreckage, wondering if any of it was worth it. The foundation. Victor Reeves and I met in the computer lab at MIT during our sophomore year. It was 2:37 a.m. on a Tuesday in October. I remember because we'd both been there for over 12 hours, hunched over our respective workstations, fueled by energy drinks, and the kind of obsessive focus only comes from chasing an elegant solution to an impossible problem. He was the first person to notice my code. "That's beautiful," he said, leaning over my shoulder. No introduction, no small talk, just pure appreciation for the recursive algorithm I'd built to optimize database queries. The way you nested those functions, I've never seen anyone structure it like that before. I turned to look at him for the first time. Tall, athletic build that seemed wrong for a computer science major, dark hair that looked like he'd been running his hands through it for hours, and eyes that were bloodshot from screen fatigue, but sharp with genuine intelligence. "It's not perfect yet," I said. "There's still latency on the third iteration." "May I?" He gestured to my keyboard. I slid my chair over. For the next 40 minutes, we didn't speak except in fragments. Try this. What if? No, wait, go back. The kind of shorthand that develops between people who think in the same language. By 3:15 a.m., we'd reduced the latency by 73%. We got coffee as the sun came up, and by the time the dining hall opened for breakfast, I knew I'd met someone rare. Not just smart. MIT was full of smart people. Victor had something else. He could see the big picture while I obsessed over the details. Where I built elegant solutions, he understood how to make them matter. Where I saw code, he saw possibilities. "We should work together," he said over his third cup of terrible cafeteria coffee. "I mean, really work together. Everything we build as a team." "Everything?" I asked. "Everything," he confirmed. 50-50, every project, every idea, every success, partners. I shook his hand across the table, littered with empty sugar packets and crumpled napkins. It felt momentous then, like we were sealing something important. I had no idea I was signing away my future. The next 6 years were the best of my life. That sounds pathetic now, given how it ended, but it's true. Victor became my best friend in the way that only happens once, maybe twice in a lifetime if you're lucky. We finished each other's code. We could debug problems together in half the time it took us. Individually, we failed the same classes, aced the same classes, pulled the same all-nighters. Junior year, we built our first real project together, a security protocol for encrypted data transfers that actually got attention from some venture capital firms. We turned down their offers. "We weren't ready yet," Victor said. "We needed to be better first." He was right. We always knew he'd be the front man and I'd be the architect. Victor had charisma, the ability to walk into a room and make people believe. I had the technical depth, the ability to build systems that actually worked. Together, we were formidable. Senior year, we shared an apartment off campus. It was a shithole, water-stained ceiling, radiator that clanked like a dying robot, kitchen so small we couldn't both stand in it at the same time. We loved it. Our whiteboards covered every wall, covered in diagrams and code snippets and wild ideas we'd sketch out at 2 a.m. when inspiration hit. "I've been thinking," Victor said one night, sitting on our sagging couch with his laptop balanced on his knees. "After we graduate, what if we actually do it, start our own company?" "With what money?" I asked, though my heart was already racing. "We don't need much to start, just enough for basic equipment and rent somewhere cheap. We build something people actually need, something that solves a real problem, not some app that helps you order pizza or find parking, something that matters." I thought about it for maybe 3 seconds. "I'm in." "Just like that?" "Just like that." Victor grinned. "There we need a third thing." "What do you mean?" "We have the technical talent. We have the vision. We need someone who believes in us enough to take the leap with us. Someone who can handle the parts we suck at, operations, HR, making sure we don't forget to eat or pay our taxes. You have someone in mind?" "I'm working on it," he said, cryptically. I met Rachel Park 3 weeks later at a MIT networking event that Victor had dragged me to. I hated networking events, the forced small talk, the business cards, the way everyone evaluated each other based on what they could extract. But Victor thrived in those environments. "Owen, this is Rachel," Victor said, appearing at my elbow with a woman who looked as uncomfortable as I felt. "She's getting her MBA at Harvard. Rachel, this is Owen, the technical genius I've been telling you about." "He's overselling me," I said automatically. "He really isn't," Victor said. "Show her the thing you built last week." I pulled out my phone, embarrassed but also unable to resist talking about my work. I showed her the prototype I'd developed for real-time threat detection in network security systems. As I explained how it worked, I noticed she was actually listening, not just nodding politely, but asking smart questions that showed she understood the business implications. "This is incredible," she said when I finished. "Do you know what something like this could be worth?" "It's just a prototype," I said. "It's a proof of concept," she corrected. "And it's exactly the kind of innovation that enterprises are desperate for. The cybersecurity market is exploding, and most solutions are reactive rather than proactive. This could be revolutionary." She had straight black hair pulled into a practical ponytail, sharp features that became animated when she talked about business strategy, and an intensity that matched Victor's in a different way. Where he was all charm and vision, she was precision and execution. Over the next hour, the three of us stood in the corner of that networking event and sketched out what would become Sentinel systems. Rachel saw angles I'd never considered: market positioning, customer acquisition, scaling strategies. She talked about operations and revenue models with the same passion Victor and I brought to architecture and code. "I want in," she said finally. "Whatever you two are building, I want to be part of it." Victor and I exchanged a look. We'd been working together so long we could communicate without words. His slight nod confirmed what I was thinking. 33% each, I said, equal partners. Rachel extended her hand. "Deal!" We shook on it right there, the three of us, and I felt that same sense of momentous possibility I'd felt when Victor and I first partnered. This time it was real, though. This time we were actually going to do it. What I didn't notice then, what I was too naive and too focused on the work to notice, was the way Victor looked at Rachel when he thought no one was watching. The way his hand lingered just a moment too long when he shook hers. The way his smile shifted into something different, something personal, when she laughed at his jokes. I was too busy imagining the future to see the warning signs of how it would all fall apart. We graduated in May 2015 and incorporated Sentinel Systems in June. Rachel's parents lent us the seed money, $50,000, that felt like a fortune. We found office space in a converted warehouse in Cambridge, 3,000 square feet, that was mostly empty except for our desks, servers, and dreams. Those first 18 months were brutal. We worked 100-hour weeks, lived on ramen and coffee, poured everything we had into building a product that actually worked. Rachel handled operations with ruthless efficiency. Victor managed client relationships and fundraising. I built the core architecture of our security platform, writing code until my eyes burned and my hands cramped. We had our first major client by month 8, a mid-sized financial services firm that needed better threat detection. Our system caught 3 sophisticated intrusion attempts in the first week. Word spread. By the end of year 1, we had 12 clients and were finally cash flow positive. Year 2, we raised our first real funding round, $2 million in Series A. We hired our first employees, moved to a bigger office, started to feel like a real company. Victor was the CEO, Rachel was our COO, and I was CTO. The 3 musketeers, Rachel called us, all for one and one for all. I was so focused on the technology that I didn't notice how close Victor and Rachel had become. They spent hours together working on strategy and planning. They traveled to pitch meetings. They grabbed lunch and dinner together to discuss operational issues. It seemed natural. They were the business side of the company after all. I was the technical side, happy in my cave, writing code and architecting systems. When Victor announced at our weekly partners meeting that he and Rachel were dating, I was surprised but not shocked. "We wanted to tell you before it became obvious," Victor said, his hand finding Rachel's across the conference table. "We know it complicates the partnership dynamic, but we think we can make it work." "Of course you can," I said, meaning it. "I'm happy for you both." I was happy for them. Victor was my best friend. Rachel had become a close friend too over the past year. Why wouldn't I want them to be happy together? "You're not worried about the company?" Rachel asked carefully. "Why would I be? We're all professionals." "You two dating doesn't change our equity structure or our working relationship. If anything, it probably makes you both more invested in Sentinel's success." "That's what I said," Victor said, grinning. Owen's always been the rational one. We toasted with cheap champagne that night, the 3 of us, celebrating both their relationship and hitting our revenue targets for the quarter. I went home to my small apartment alone, happy for my friends, proud of what we were building together. I should have seen it then. The way partnerships shift when 2 people become closer to each other than to the third. The way we starts to mean 2 people instead of 3. But I was 25 years old, brilliant with systems and code and architecture, and catastrophically naive about human nature. Over the next 3 years, Sentinel Systems exploded. We raised a Series B round of $15 million. Our client list grew to include major corporations, government contractors, Fortune 500 companies. We hired aggressively engineers, salespeople, support staff. We moved into a beautiful office in downtown Boston with exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. Victor and Rachel got married in June 2018. I was the best man. I gave a speech about how Victor and I met in that computer lab, how we'd built everything together from nothing, how Rachel had completed our team and made us whole. People cried. Victor hugged me and told me I was his brother, that none of this would exist without me. I meant every word of that speech. They meant everything to me, both of them. Victor was my closest friend, the person who understood my work and my vision better than anyone. Rachel was brilliant and driven and had become a true friend in her own right. Their happiness was my happiness. Looking back now, I can see the signs I missed. The closed-door meetings that lasted just a bit too long. The way Victor and Rachel would exchange glances during board meetings, communicating in that silent language that couples develop. The gradual shift in how decisions got made, less collaborative brainstorming between the three of us, more Victor and Rachel think we should presentations. But I was deep in the technical trenches. We were scaling rapidly, and scaling complex security systems is like building a house of cards in a windstorm. Every new client brought new challenges. Every new feature required careful architecture. I was working 16-hour days, managing a team of 20 engineers, personally reviewing every major code commit. I was also, if I'm being honest, lonely. Victor and Rachel had each other. They went home together every night, made decisions together, built a life together. I went home to my apartment and kept working. My social life consisted of team meetings and code reviews. My romantic life was non-existent. "You should date," Rachel told me one afternoon when she caught me eating lunch, alone at my desk for the third day in a row. "You work too much, Owen. You need a life outside of Sentinel." "I have a life," I protested. "Work isn't a life." "When's the last time you went on a date? When's the last time you did anything just for fun?" I couldn't remember. "I'll work on it," I promised, not meaning it. Promised. "We worry about you," she said, and her concern seemed genuine. "Victor and I both do. You're so talented, Owen. You deserve to be happy outside of this office." "I am happy," I said. "This company is everything I dreamed of. Working with you and Victor, it's perfect." She smiled, but something flickered in her eyes that I couldn't read. "Promise me you'll try. Promise me you'll let yourself have a real life." "I promise," I said, still not meaning it. She left, and I went back to work. And I didn't think about that conversation again until much later, when I realized she'd been trying to tell me something I was too oblivious to hear. The shift started so gradually I almost didn't notice it. Little things at first. Victor stopped inviting me to grab lunch like he used to. Our Friday afternoon brainstorming sessions, a tradition since MIT, got rescheduled, then cancelled, then just stopped happening. When I brought new ideas to him, he seemed distracted, less engaged than before. "Things have gotten so busy," he explained when I asked about it. "Running a company this size is different than when it was just the three of us, you know. I have to spend more time on investor relations, strategic planning, that kind of thing." It made sense. We had 90 employees now. We were doing 30 million in annual revenue. Victor's job as CEO had evolved beyond the technical partnership we'd started with. I understood that. But then came the board meeting in March 2019 that changed everything. We needed to talk about technical leadership, Victor said, standing at the head of our conference table with Rachel beside him. The three outside board members we'd added with our Series B funding sat along one side. I sat alone on the other. "What about it?" I asked. "Owen, you're an incredible architect," Victor began, and my stomach dropped. Nothing good ever started with that kind of qualified praise. "The systems you've built are the foundation of everything Sentinel has accomplished, but as we scale, we need to think about different skill sets for different roles." "I don't understand what you're saying." Rachel jumped in, her voice gentle but firm. "We're proposing bringing in a VP of engineering to manage the technical teams, someone with experience scaling engineering organizations at this size. You'd shift to a chief architect role, focusing purely on the technology vision and innovation." "You want to replace me?" My voice came out flat, shocked. "Not replace," Victor said quickly. "Restructure. You'd still be CTO in title, but with a different focus. The day-to-day management of 80 engineers isn't the best use of your talents, Owen. You should be thinking about next-generation systems, not sitting in status meetings." One of the board members, a venture capitalist named Martin Shea, who'd led our Series B, cleared his throat. "For what it's worth, Owen, this is a common evolution. Founders often aren't the right people to scale beyond a certain point. No one questions your technical brilliance. This is about operational efficiency." "I built this company's entire technical infrastructure," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I know every line of our code base. I hired and trained every engineer on our team, and you think I can't scale?" "It's not about what you can or can't do," Rachel said. "It's about optimal resource allocation. We're about to raise a Series C. We're targeting 50 million. Investors want to see seasoned executive leadership across all functions." "Did they ask for this? Or are you using them as an excuse?" Victor's jaw tightened. "That's not fair, Owen. We're all making hard decisions here. Rachel and I have both had to evolve our roles. This is about what's best for Sentinel." "What's best for Sentinel? Or what's best for you?" The words hung in the air. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Rachel's expression hardened into something I'd never seen before. Cold, calculated, distant. "Let's take a vote," Martin Shea said, breaking the tension. "All in favor of restructuring the technical leadership as proposed?" Victor raised his hand. Rachel raised hers. The three board members raised theirs. "Opposed?" I raised my hand alone. "Motion passes," Martin said. "Owen, we'll draft up the new organizational structure and role descriptions. We appreciate your willingness to adapt for the good of the company." I hadn't said I was willing, but it didn't matter. I'd just been outvoted on a fundamental decision about my own position in the company I'd co-founded. The meeting ended. Everyone filed out except Victor and Rachel. I sat there, staring at the table. "Owen," Victor said quietly, "I know this is hard, but you have to trust us. This is the right move." "How long have you been planning this?" They exchanged a glance, that silent communication again. "A few months," Rachel admitted. "We wanted to present it to you and the board at this same time, to show that we'd thought it through. You could have talked to me first, before going to the board, before making it a formal proposal." "Would you have listened?" Victor asked. "Or would you have fought us on it?" The fact that he was right made it worse. I would have fought. I would have argued and pushed back, and refused to see their point. But that didn't excuse the ambush. "I thought we were partners," I said. "We are partners," Rachel said. "That's why we're doing this, to protect what we've built together." But as I walked out of that conference room, I knew something fundamental had broken. The three musketeers were down to two, and I was on the outside looking in. His name was Derek Hoffman, and he started as our new VP of Engineering in May 2019. 42 years old, previously an engineering director at Google, with an impressive resume and the kind of confidence that comes from years of success. I hated him on sight. "Owen, great to finally meet you," he said on his first day, extending his hand in my office. "Victor and Rachel have told me so much about your work. The architecture you've built here is really impressive." "Thanks," I said, shaking his hand briefly. "I'm looking forward to working together. I see my role as taking the operational burden off your shoulders so you can focus on the innovation side. Think of me as your implementer." It sounded good in theory. In practice, it meant Derek started making decisions about my teams, my code, my systems. Decisions he'd make with Victor and Rachel in closed-door meetings I wasn't invited to. The first major conflict came in June when Derek proposed rewriting our core threat detection algorithm. "It's too complex," he explained, in a team meeting I'd only been invited to as a courtesy. "We need something more maintainable, more scalable. I've got my guys working on a simplified version." "The complexity is necessary," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "Every edge case, every nested condition, it's all there for a reason. I can walk you through the logic." "I don't doubt you had good reasons when you wrote it 3 years ago," Derek said with a patronizing smile. "But technology moves fast. Sometimes we have to let go of our legacy code and build for the future." "It's not legacy code, it's production code that's currently protecting 28 enterprise clients from active threats. You can't just rewrite it without understanding every—" "Owen," Victor interrupted. He'd been sitting quietly in the corner. "Derek has a point about scalability. Maybe we should let his team explore alternatives." "Explore alternatives, or replace 3 years of work with something unproven." "We're not making any changes without thorough testing," Derek said. "But I need my team to have the authority to innovate without constantly deferring to legacy decisions." Legacy decisions, legacy code. As if everything I'd built was obsolete, I looked at all Victor, waiting for him to back me up. We'd built this together. He knew how critical that algorithm was. He knew how many nights I'd spent perfecting it. "Let's give Derek some room to work," Victor said. "If his approach performs better, we'll adopt it. If not, we stick with yours. That's fair, right?" It wasn't fair. It was a vote of no confidence. But I was outnumbered again, so I nodded and left the meeting before I said something I'd regret. I started staying later at the office, long after everyone else went home, partly because I had nowhere else to be, partly because I couldn't stand the way Derek ran my teams during normal hours, but mostly because I was beginning to suspect something was wrong beyond just organizational restructuring. Little things didn't add up. Budget allocations that didn't match what I'd approved. Server costs that were higher than they should be. New vendors I'd never heard of appearing in our technical stack. When I asked Derek or Rachel about these discrepancies, I got vague answers about operational efficiencies and strategic initiatives. One night in July, I was working late when I noticed Derek had left his laptop unlocked in the conference room. He'd gone home hours ago, probably forgot it in his rush to catch the train. I should have just locked it and left it for him. Instead, I sat down in front of it. I told myself I was just checking on the work his team was doing, making sure they weren't breaking anything critical. But I knew what I was really doing. I was looking for proof of what I'd started to suspect. His email was open. I started scrolling, skimming subject lines. Most of it was boring operational stuff. But then I saw an email thread from 3 weeks ago with the subject line, "Transition Planning Confidential." My cursor hovered over it. This was wrong. This was a violation of trust. This could get me fired. I clicked it anyway. The email chain was between Derek, Victor, Rachel, and Martin, Shay from the board. As I read through the messages, my hands started shaking. From Martin Shay to Victor Reeves, Rachel Reeves, Derek Hoffman. Subject, Transition Planning, Confidential Victor, Rachel. I think Derek's assessment is correct. Owen is becoming a liability rather than an asset. His resistance to organizational changes shows he's not capable of scaling with the company. The question is timing. We need to manage this carefully to avoid disruption. From Victor Reeves to Martin Shay, Rachel Reeves, Derek Hoffman. Subject, Transition Planning, Confidential, agreed. I've known Owen for almost a decade. He's brilliant but rigid. He can't adapt to not being the sole technical authority. Derek, how long before your team can fully operate independently? From Derek Hoffman to Victor Reeves, Rachel Reeves, Martin Shay ***. Subject, transition. Planning confidential ***. Give me 4 months to document the core systems and cross-train my team. By November, Owen will be redundant. We can restructure him out without any operational impact. From Rachel Reeves to Victor Reeves, Martin Shay, Derek Hoffman. Subject, transition. Planning, confidential. We should also consider the equity implications. Owen still holds 33% of the company. If we force him out, he keeps his shares but loses his board seat and operational control. That might actually be the cleanest solution. He gets to stay rich while we get to actually run the company properly. I sat there reading and rereading those messages, each word like a physical blow. They weren't restructuring me to better use my talents. They were planning to push me out entirely. Victor, my best friend since we were 20 years old, my partner in everything we'd built, was calling me a liability. Rachel, who I'd welcomed into our company and our lives, was already calculating the equity implications of my removal. And Derek, the man they'd brought in supposedly to support me, had been hired specifically to replace me. The worst part was Rachel's final line. He gets to stay rich while we get to actually run the company properly. As if I'd been running it improperly. As if I was the problem holding Sentinel back, not the person who'd architected every system that made it valuable. I forwarded the entire email chain to my personal account. Then I carefully closed Derek's laptop and left it exactly as I'd found it. I drove home in a daze. My hands were still shaking. I kept replaying those messages in my head, looking for another interpretation, some way to read them that didn't mean what they so obviously meant. There wasn't one. My best friend and my business partner had decided I was expendable, and they'd been planning my exit for months while smiling to my face and telling me everything was fine. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. I went to work like normal, attended meetings like normal, wrote code like normal, but inside I was screaming. Every interaction with Victor now had a double meaning. When he asked how I was doing, I heard, How close are we to making you irrelevant? When he suggested I take some vacation time, I heard, "We want you out of the office while we plan your exit." Rachel was worse somehow. The concern in her eyes when she asked if I was okay felt like mockery. The way she'd touch my arm and tell me we were all in this together, it made my skin crawl. I started documenting everything, every email, every decision, every meeting. I copied financial records to encrypted drives. I backed up code repositories to personal servers. I made sure I had evidence of every contribution I'd made, every system I'd designed, every decision that had come from me. I wasn't sure yet what I'd do with it all, but I knew I needed leverage. In August, Victor and Rachel invited me to lunch. Just the three of us, they said, like old times. We went to a restaurant we used to frequent when we were starting out, back when we could barely afford appetizers. Now we sat in a private room, expensive wine on the table, and I knew what was coming. "Owen, we need to talk about your role at Sentinel," Victor began. "I figured," I said. He looked surprised. "You did? I'm not an idiot, Victor. I know when I'm being edged out." Rachel set down her wine glass carefully. "We're not edging you out. We're trying to find the right place for you in the company's evolution." "What does that mean exactly?" Victor leaned forward. "It means we think you'd be happier focusing on research and development, pure innovation, no operational responsibilities. We'd create a new role for you, Chief Innovation Officer. You'd have a small team, complete freedom to explore new technologies. You'd still be an equal partner in ownership, just with a different focus. And I'd lose my board seat." "Board seats should be tied to operational roles," Rachel said. "It's standard corporate governance. You'd still have input on major decisions through your ownership stake, but no vote. The board would still hear your perspective," Victor said. "We value your input, Owen. We always have. This is about structure, not about your worth to the company." I looked at both of them. Victor, who I'd trusted more than anyone in the world. Rachel, who'd promised we were all in this together. "And if I say no?" I asked. They exchanged that glance again. The silent communication of a couple who'd already discussed this exact scenario. "Then we'd have to seriously reconsider our working relationship," Rachel said carefully. "We can't have a CTO who isn't aligned with the company's direction." "You mean you'd fire me?" "We prefer to call it a mutual separation," Victor said. "You'd keep your equity, of course. We'd work out a fair consulting agreement. You'd still benefit from Sentinel's success, just without any say in how that success happens." "Owen, please," Victor said, and for a moment he sounded like my old friend. "Don't make this harder than it has to be. You know the company has outgrown the three-person partnership model. This is just business." "Just business," I repeated. "Tell me, Victor, when did you decide to push me out? Was it before or after you brought Derek in?" His face went carefully neutral. "I don't know what you mean." "The transition planning emails, the ones where you call me a liability, where you and Rachel and Derek plot out exactly how to make me redundant." "Was that just business too?" Rachel's expression hardened. "You've been reading private communications." "Derek left his laptop unlocked. I happened to see them." "That's a violation of privacy," she said. "And planning to force out your co-founder behind his back, what's that?" "It's called leadership," Victor snapped, his composure finally cracking. "It's called making hard decisions for the good of the company. Yes, Owen, we've been planning this, because you've become
impossible to work with. You resist every change, question every decision, act like you're the only person who knows anything about our technology. I built our technology 6 years ago, and you've been clinging to it ever since, refusing to evolve, refusing to let anyone else contribute meaningfully. Derek's team has already improved on half your systems. The new threat detection algorithm is faster and more accurate than yours, but you can't see that because you can't stand the idea that someone might be better than you. The words hit like punches, not because they were entirely wrong, but because there was just enough truth in them to hurt. Is that really how you see me? I asked quietly. Victor's anger deflated. Oh, and I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. And maybe you're right. And maybe I have been holding too tight. But you didn't have to lie to me. You didn't have to smile to my face while planning my exit behind my back. I thought we were friends. I
Thought we were partners. We were, Victor said. We are. But sometimes friendship and business don't mix. Sometimes you have to choose. And you chose business. He didn't deny it. Rachel spoke up, her voice softer now. Take some time. Think about the Chief Innovation Officer position. It really could be good for you, Owen. Freedom to work on whatever interests you, no operational stress. You could be happy. I stood up. I need some air. I left them there with their expensive wine and their careful plans. I walked for hours through Boston, my mind racing, trying to figure out what to do. I could fight. I could refuse to step down, make them force me out, create a legal battle that would hurt all of us. I could accept their offer, take the diminished role, keep my equity, fade into the background, or I could do something else entirely, something they wouldn't see coming. By the time I made it home that night, I knew what I had to do. Not the ethical choice, not the smart choice, but the only choice that made the screaming in my head stop. I was going to destroy them both. The thing about building complex systems is that you learn to think in layers. Surface functionality, underlying architecture, hidden dependencies. You learn to see the invisible connections that hold everything together. You learn exactly where to apply pressure to make the whole structure collapse. I spent weeks planning. Not in anger. Anger makes you sloppy. I planned in cold, methodical detail, the same way I'd architect a new system. I identified dependencies, I mapped vulnerabilities, I found the leverage points, I accepted their offer. I became Chief Innovation Officer with a smile and a handshake and a promise to make this transition work. Victor looked relieved. Rachel looked proud. They thought they'd won. They had no idea I was already 3 steps ahead. The first thing I did was secure my access. I'd built Sentinel's infrastructure from the ground up. I had administrative credentials to every system, backdoors I'd created for emergency maintenance, access levels that predated the formal security policies Derek had implemented. I documented all of it, confirmed it all still worked. Then I started gathering intelligence. Not dramatically, no late-night hacking into forbidden files. I just paid attention. I listened in meetings. I noted who talked to whom. I tracked the flow of information, the patterns of decision-making, the networks of trust. Victor and Rachel had become sloppy. They thought of me as neutralized, defeated, safely tucked away in my new innovation role where I couldn't cause trouble. They talked openly about company strategy in front of me. They discussed the Series C fundraising round we were planning for early 2020. They mentioned the valuation we were targeting, $200 million. With my 33% stake, That would make my shares worth $66 million. Not bad for being forced out. But I didn't want money. I wanted them to understand what they'd taken from me. I learned that Derek was having an affair with one of the junior engineers. I learned that our lead sales director was inflating his numbers to hit bonus targets. I learned that Rachel's operational efficiencies included some questionable accounting practices that might not survive a real audit, but the really valuable information came from watching Victor and Rachel together when they thought no one was paying attention. They'd gotten comfortable, too comfortable. They'd been together for 3 years, married for 1, and they'd settled into the kind of relationship where the excitement had faded into routine. I saw it in the way they barely touched anymore, the way they'd sit in meetings without even looking at each other, the way Victor would stay late at the office, not because he had work to do, but because he didn't want to go home. And I saw the way he looked at our new VP of Marketing, a woman named Samantha Chen, who'd joined us in September. Oh, the irony! I'd specifically requested we hire her because her credentials were impeccable. She had an MBA from Stanford, had run marketing for 2 successful startups, and had the kind of strategic mind we needed. I'd advocated for her in the hiring committee. Victor had agreed enthusiastically. Too enthusiastically, as it turned out. Within 6 weeks, Victor was finding excuses to work closely with Samantha. Lunch meetings that ran long, late-night strategy sessions. That particular energy that exists between 2 people who are attracted to each other but haven't acted on it yet. Rachel noticed too. I saw her watching them, saw the tightness around her eyes, the way her jaw would clench when Victor laughed at one of Samantha's jokes. I filed that information away. It might be useful. In October 2019, we kicked off the Series C fundraising process. We needed $50 million to scale aggressively, expand into new markets, build out our product line. Victor and Rachel had been cultivating relationships with top-tier venture capital firms for months. The pitch was strong. Our revenue had grown from $30 million to $45 million in the past year. Our client retention rate was 94%. Our technology was genuinely innovative. On paper, we were exactly the kind of company VCs dream about. But then strange things started happening. Small things at first. Technical demos that glitched at crucial moments. Client references who seemed hesitant in their endorsements, questions from potential investors about operational stability and technical leadership. Victor came to my office in early November, frustrated. We're hitting unexpected resistance on the Series C. Investors keep asking about technical risks and whether our platform can actually scale. That's concerning, I said, neutrally. What are they hearing? I don't know, but someone is raising doubts. We've had 3 firms pass who were initially very interested. Maybe Derek should lead more of the technical due diligence, I suggested. He's supposed to be the scaling expert, right? Yeah, Victor said, though he didn't sound convinced. I'll talk to him. He left, and I went back to work. My real work, the invisible work he knew nothing about. Over the past month, I'd been carefully, subtly poisoning the well. Anonymous posts on industry forums raising questions about Sentinel's architecture, carefully worded concerns shared with technical evaluators at VC firms through burner email accounts. Nothing directly false, just strategic emphasis on real limitations and challenges. The beautiful thing about being the actual architect is that I knew exactly what our weaknesses were. I knew which technical debt we'd accumulated. I knew which design decisions would cause problems at scale. I knew where the system would break under pressure, and I made sure the right people started asking about those exact issues. By December, the Series C was stalling. Firms that had been enthusiastic were now requesting additional technical audits. The valuation we'd been targeting kept dropping. Victor was spending 18 hours a day in pitch meetings trying to salvage the round. Rachel cornered me in the break room one afternoon. "Owen, I need to ask you something directly." "Okay." "Are you sabotaging the fundraise?" I looked her straight in the eye. "Why would I do that? My equity is worth exactly the same as yours. If the round fails, I lose just as much money." "I don't think you care about money," she said quietly. "I think you care about being right. About proving we couldn't succeed without you." "That's a pretty dark view of my character." "Is it wrong?" I held her gaze. "I've been doing exactly what you asked me to do, Rachel, staying in my innovation lane, not interfering with operations. If the fundraise is having problems, maybe you should look at your own decisions instead of blaming me." She studied my face for a long moment. "I don't believe you." "Belief is optional. Proof isn't. And you don't have any." She left, but I knew I was running out of time. They were suspicious now. I needed to accelerate my timeline. The thing that finally pushed Victor over the edge with Samantha happened at our holiday party in mid-December. I know because I made sure it happened. It wasn't hard. I'd been watching them for months, seeing the attraction build. All I had to do was create the right conditions, a party where alcohol flowed freely, an office setup that left certain corners dimly lit and relatively private, a carefully timed conversation with Rachel that kept her occupied across the room at the exact moment Victor and Samantha found themselves alone by the windows overlooking the harbour. I wasn't there when they kissed, but I saw Rachel see it. I watched her face go white, watched her set down her drink very carefully, watched her walk calmly to the bathroom and not come back out for 20 minutes. When she finally emerged, her eyes were red, but her makeup was perfect and her expression was ice cold. She found Victor, said something quiet to him, and they left together. The party continued without them, everyone too drunk or too polite to acknowledge what had just happened. I went home that night satisfied. I'd driven the first real wedge between them. Everything that came next would be easier. After the holidays, Sentinel felt different. The easy partnership between Victor and Rachel was gone, replaced by a careful professional distance that everyone noticed but no one acknowledged. They were still trying to salvage the Series C, but the strain was showing. Victor looked exhausted, shadows under his eyes, weight dropping off him. Rachel was all sharp edges and cold efficiency, driving everyone harder to make up for the fundraising delays. I played the concerned friend beautifully. "Victor, you doing okay?" I'd ask, finding him alone in his office late at night. "Just tired," he'd say. "This fundraise is killing me." "How are things with Rachel?" "Fine. Why?" "You just seem tense with each other since the party." "It's nothing, just stress." But it wasn't nothing, and we both knew it. Rachel had seen him kiss Samantha. Whether they'd talked about it, whether Victor had apologized or denied or admitted it, I didn't know. But the trust between them was cracked, and I knew exactly how to shatter it completely. I'd spent months documenting everything, every financial irregularity, every questionable decision, every corner Rachel had cut to make our numbers look better to investors. None of it was dramatically illegal, but all of it was problematic. the kind of thing that would raise serious questions in a proper audit. In January 2020, I packaged it all up, spreadsheets, emails, system logs, and sent it anonymously to the SEC, not enough to trigger a formal investigation, just enough to raise flags, enough for the SEC to send a letter requesting additional information about specific transactions and accounting practices. The letter arrived in February, right in the middle of our Series C due diligence process. I watched Rachel's face when she read it, watched all the colour drain away, watched her hands shake as she set the letter down. "We need to talk," she said to Victor, her voice barely controlled. "Now, privately." They disappeared into Victor's office for 2 hours. When they emerged, Rachel looked devastated and Victor looked furious. That afternoon, they had to disclose the SEC inquiry to our potential Series C investors, not because they wanted to, but because they legally had to. 3 firms immediately withdrew their term sheets. The Series C was dead. Without the Series C funding, everything started to fall apart. We'd been spending in anticipation of that $50 million. We'd hired aggressively, signed
expensive leases, made commitments we couldn't back out of. When the funding didn't materialize, we were suddenly burning cash with no clear path to profitability. Victor and Rachel tried to salvage it. They cut costs, laid off staff, renegotiated contracts, but the damage was done. Word spread that Sentinel was in trouble. Clients started asking questions. Employees started looking for other jobs. Derek left in March, taking half the engineering team with him. Our lead sales director left in April. By May, we'd lost 40% of our staff. And through it all, Victor and Rachel's relationship disintegrated. I don't know if Rachel ever confronted Victor directly about Samantha, but I do know that Samantha left the company in March, and I know that Victor started sleeping in his office more nights than not. I played the loyal friend through all of it. I offered to help cut costs in my innovation team. I offered ideas for salvaging client relationships. I stayed late working on
technical problems while everyone else abandoned ship. I was the rock, the steady one, the person who'd built this company and refused to give up on it. And Victor and Rachel were too busy trying to save the company and their marriage to see what I was really doing. In June 2020, with Sentinel in full crisis mode and Victor and Rachel barely speaking to each other, I made my next move. I discovered something months earlier while going through old financial records. Something that would have been easy to miss if you weren't looking for it. Something that implicated both Victor and Rachel in actual fraud, not just aggressive accounting. Back in 2018, during our Series B fundraise, they'd inflated our revenue numbers by booking future contracts as current revenue. They'd created fake documentation of deals that were pending but not actually signed. They'd misrepresented our growth metrics to investors. It had worked. We'd raised $15 million on those inflated
numbers, and then we'd scrambled to actually make those projections come true over the next year. We had succeeded eventually. By the end of 2018, we'd actually achieved the revenue they'd lied about. So in a sense, no one had been harmed. The investors got what they paid for, just not on the timeline they'd been told. But it was still fraud. Clear, prosecutable securities fraud. I'd found the evidence in Rachel's old files, emails between her and Victor discussing exactly how to present the numbers. Draft pitch decks showing the real figures crossed out and replaced with inflated ones, documentation of the fake contracts they'd created. I'd copied it all, encrypted it, kept it safe. And in June 2020, I sent it to the SEC, not anonymously this time, with my name attached and a detailed cover letter explaining exactly what Victor and Rachel had done. The SEC investigation moved fast once they had actual evidence of fraud. By July, both Victor and Rachel were being formally
questioned. Their lawyers advised them to cooperate fully and hope for leniency. The company was now toxic. Our remaining clients fled. Our remaining employees left. Our board demanded Victor and Rachel step down from operational roles. The three of us were called to an emergency board meeting in August. "This is a disaster," Martin Shea said without preamble. "The company is functionally worthless. We've lost our clients, our team, our reputation. The SEC is investigating our founders for securities fraud. The best we can hope for is to sell whatever IP remains for pennies on the dollar. Or we could rebuild," I said quietly. Everyone turned to look at me. "The core technology is still solid," I continued. "The client relationships are damaged but not destroyed. If we had the right leadership, someone without legal liabilities, someone the clients trust, we might be able to salvage this." "What are you suggesting?" Martin asked. "I'm suggesting that Victor and Rachel formally resign from all operational roles and transfer their board seats to me. I take over as CEO and CTO. I reach out to our former clients, explain that we've cleaned house, that the people responsible for the problems gone. Some of them might give us another chance." Victor stared at me. "You're serious? I built this company's technology. I can rebuild the company itself, but only if I have full control." "This is insane," Rachel said. "You're using our legal problems to take over Sentinel." "I'm offering a solution. You can fight me, go through lengthy legal battles, watch whatever value remains get consumed by lawyers, or you can resign gracefully, keep your equity stake, and let me try to save the company." "Why would we trust you?" Victor asked. "Because I'm the only option you have left." The board voted that afternoon. 5 votes in favor of my proposal, 0 opposed. Victor and Rachel had abstained. By the end of the week, I was CEO and sole board member of Sentinel Systems. Victor and Rachel retained their equity but had no operational control. They were forbidden from company premises and had no access to systems or data. I'd won. The next 6 months were the hardest work of my life. I was running a company that was 90% destroyed, trying to rebuild credibility while Victor and Rachel's legal problems dominated the news. But I'd been planning for this. I knew which clients to approach first. I knew which former employees might come back. I knew exactly what story to tell about how we'd been misled by unethical leadership and had now recommitted to our founding technical excellence. It worked, slowly. A few clients gave us another chance. A few key employees returned. We were a fraction of our former size, but we were stable. And then in February 2021, the SEC concluded its investigation. Victor and Rachel were charged with securities fraud. The charges were serious but not catastrophic, mostly fines and restrictions on future business activities. Their lawyers negotiated a settlement. They paid millions in penalties and agreed never to serve as officers of a public company again. They also had to sell their Sentinel equity. SEC regulations required it as part of the settlement. And guess who was ready with an offer to buy them out? I bought their combined 66% stake for pennies on the dollar. They had no choice but to accept. The legal fees and SEC fines had bankrupted them. They needed whatever cash they could get. By March 2021, I owned 99% of Sentinel Systems, the company my best friend and I had founded together, the company they'd tried to take from me. It was all mine. Victor and Rachel's marriage didn't survive. How could it? They'd lost everything, their company, their money, their reputations, and they'd lost it together, each blaming the other for the decisions that brought them down. The divorce was ugly. I heard about it through mutual acquaintances. Rachel accused Victor of infidelity. Victor accused Rachel of being the architect of the fraud. They fought over what little assets remained. In the end, they each walked away with almost nothing. Rachel moved back in with her parents in California. Victor took a job as a mid-level developer at a software company in Texas, a devastating step down from CEO of a rapidly growing startup. I heard he drank too much now. I heard he'd aged 10 years in one. I heard his new colleagues had no idea he'd once been the charismatic founder of a promising tech company. I heard all of this and felt nothing. By 2022, Sentinel Systems was thriving again. We'd rebuilt our client base, expanded our technology, started growing sustainably. We weren't the rocket ship we'd once been, but we were profitable and respected. I ran the company exactly the way I'd always wanted to. Technical excellence above all else. No aggressive growth targets that required cutting corners. No flashy fundraising rounds with investors I'd have to please. Just solid engineering and honest business practices. I hired carefully. I built a culture where technical merit mattered more than politics. I made decisions based on what was right for the long-term health of the company, not quarterly targets. In April 2023, I sold Sentinel Systems to a Fortune 500 company for $85 million. After taxes, I walked away with about $50 million, enough to never work again if I didn't want to, enough to buy any material thing I could imagine, enough to be set for life. I'd won completely. I'd destroyed the people who betrayed me, taken back the company they stole, and turned it into a success that made me rich. And I felt absolutely hollow. I'm sitting in my apartment now, 3 years after selling Sentinel. It's a beautiful apartment, top floor of a high-rise in Boston, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor, expensive furniture, all the comforts
Money can buy. I'm 38 years old. I'm worth $50 million. I have no job I need to show up to, no obligations, no responsibilities. I'm completely alone. I haven't had a meaningful conversation with another person in weeks. The few friends I had outside of Sentinel drifted away during the years I spent obsessed with revenge. My family is still around, but they don't really understand me anymore. I've become someone they're slightly afraid of. Dating is impossible. How do you explain your past to someone new? I destroyed my best friend's life because he tried to force me out of our company. Yes, he betrayed me first, but the revenge consumed 5 years of my life and left me psychologically damaged. Want to get dinner? I spend my days reading, coding personal projects that don't matter, working out, traveling to cities where I know no one. I spend my nights unable to sleep, my mind replaying everything that happened, looking for the moment where it all went wrong. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd made different choices, if I'd fought Victor and Rachel legally instead of destroying them personally, if I'd just walked away with my equity and started fresh somewhere else, if I'd tried to actually talk to them about how their betrayal made me feel instead of plotting revenge. Would I be happier now? Would I have friends, a partner, a life that felt meaningful? I'll never know. The notification sound on my phone goes off. I still flinch even now. I check it reflexively. It's an email from an address I don't recognize. The subject line is just one word. Owen. I almost delete it. I get a lot of spam, but something makes me open it. Owen, I don't expect you to respond to this. I'm not even sure you'll read it. But I needed to write it anyway. I know what you did. I've known for a while now. The anonymous SEC tips, the poisoned well with investors, the way you engineered everything to fall apart. It took me a long time to put all the pieces together, but once I did, it was obvious. You were always 3 steps ahead. I should have remembered that. I'm not writing to accuse you or threaten you. I'm writing because I need you to know something. You were right. Rachel and I did betray you. We convinced ourselves it was necessary, that you were holding the company back, that we were making hard business decisions. But the truth is, we got greedy. We got comfortable. We forgot that Sentinel was yours as much as ours. We forgot that you were my friend before you were my business partner. We forgot everything we built together. We forgot why we started all of this in the first place. And you made us pay for it. God, did you make us pay? I lost everything, Owen. My company, my money, my marriage, my reputation. I lost the career I spent my whole adult life building. I lost the respect of everyone I knew. I lost the person I thought I was. But the worst part, the part that keeps me
up at night, is that I lost you, my best friend, the person who understood me better than anyone, the person I'd have trusted with my life until the day I decided to betray him instead. I know sorry doesn't fix anything. I know there's no going back, but I need you to know that I understand now. I understand what I took from you, and I understand why you did what you did. If I could go back to that board meeting in 2019 and make a different choice, I would. I'd tell Rachel and the board that you weren't the problem. I'd fight to keep us together as equal partners. I'd remember that some things matter more than money or growth or success. But I can't go back. All I can do is live with what I've become. A cautionary tale. A lesson in hubris, the guy who had everything and threw it away because he forgot what actually mattered. I hope you're doing better than I am. I hope the revenge gave you what you needed. I hope you found some kind of peace. I doubt I'll ever find mine. Victor. I read the email 3 times. Then I closed my laptop and walked to the window. The sun is setting over Boston Harbor, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It's beautiful, objectively beautiful. But I don't feel anything looking at it. Victor's right. The revenge did exactly what I designed it to do. It destroyed him. It destroyed Rachel. It destroyed everything they'd built after they tried to destroy me. But it also destroyed me. Because here's what I've learned about revenge. It's a fire that burns everything it touches, including the person who lights it. I got justice. I got vindication. I proved I was right, and they were wrong. I won so completely that they'll spend the rest of their lives dealing with the consequences. And I'm standing here in my expensive apartment worth $50 million with no one to share it with, and nothing that makes me want to wake up in the morning. I could respond to Victor's email. I could tell him I forgive him. I could try to rebuild some kind of relationship, some echo of what we once had. But I won't. Because that person, the Owen who believed in friendship and partnership and building things together, died the night I read those emails planning my removal. The person I am now is someone different, someone harder, someone who knows that trust is a weakness and loyalty is a fairy tale. I built a perfect revenge. I architected the destruction of my enemies with the same precision I once used to build security systems, every move calculated, every outcome predicted, a masterpiece of strategic manipulation, and the cost was my humanity. I don't know if I'd do it differently if I could go back. Part of me says, yes, walk away, take the money, build a new life, don't let them turn you into something cold and broken. Part of me says I had no choice, that they left me no other option, that everything I did was justified. Maybe both are true, maybe that's the real lesson, that betrayal poisons everyone it touches, that there are no clean wins when you're destroying people you once loved. That revenge might give you satisfaction in the moment, but leaves you with nothing when the dust settles. The notification sound goes off again. Another email, this one is from Rachel. I don't open it. I don't need to know what she has to say. I don't need her apology or her accusations or her attempts to make sense of what happened. I know exactly what happened. I know every move I made and why I made it. I know the precise anatomy of their destruction. What I don't know is how to build something meaningful from the wreckage. What I don't know is how to be a person again instead of a perfectly executed revenge plot in human form. What I don't know is whether it was worth it. I turn away from the window and pour myself a drink. The expensive scotch tastes like nothing. Everything tastes like nothing now. The notification sound on my phone still makes my chest tighten even though it's been 3 years. Some wounds don't heal. They just learn to hide better. I'm in a coffee shop in Seattle. I moved here 2 months ago because Boston held too many ghosts. New city, new start, the same emptiness following me like a shadow. I'm working on a new project. Not for money. I don't need money. For purpose. For something to fill the hours between waking and sleeping. The notification sound makes me flinch. Email from an unknown sender. I've gotten a lot of those since Victor's first message. People from our old Sentinel days reaching out to tell me they knew, or they suspected, or they wanted to understand. I've ignored all of them. But this one is different. The subject line reads, "From someone who understands." Against my better judgment, I open it. Owen, you don't know me, but I know your story. I was a VC analyst at one of the firms that passed on your Series C. I saw what you did, how you systematically dismantled your own company to punish the people who betrayed you. I watched it happen in real time and couldn't say anything because I'd signed NDAs. But I understood. God, did I understand. 5 years ago, my business partner forced me out of our startup. Same playbook, brought in new executives, restructured my role, made me redundant. I fought legally. I won my equity but lost everything else. I spent 2 years planning revenge. I sabotaged their fundraising. I stole their clients. I destroyed their reputation in the industry. I won. And then I spent the next 3 years learning the same lesson you're learning now. Revenge is a hollow victory. I'm reaching out because I think you might be ready to hear something I wish someone had told me. You can't go back and undo the revenge. You can't resurrect the person you were before the betrayal, but you can decide what comes next. I started a support group for people like us, founders who were betrayed by partners, people who got their revenge and discovered it wasn't enough, people trying to figure out how to build a life from the ashes of their burned bridges. We meet every Thursday evening, just 8 of us so far. We talk about what happened, what we did, what we're trying to become. No judgment, no advice, just witnessing each other's damage and trying to heal. You don't have to come. You don't even have to respond to this email. But if you ever want to sit in a room with people who actually understand what you did and why you did it, people who are trying to answer the same questions you're asking yourself at 3 a.m., we're here. The address is below. We'll save you a seat. I read the email 4 times. My hand hovers over the delete button. The rational part of my brain says this is a terrible idea. Opening up to strangers about the worst things I've done, admitting that the revenge didn't fix me, acknowledging that I need help. But the part of me that hasn't spoken in years, the part that still remembers what it felt like to have friends, to trust people, to believe in something beyond perfect systems and calculated destruction, whispers that maybe this is the first step toward becoming human again. Maybe. I save the email in a folder labeled unread. I'll think about it. I'll consider it. I'll probably delete it tomorrow when I'm thinking more clearly. But for now, sitting in this coffee shop in a city where no one knows my name or my history, I have something I haven't had in 5 years, a possibility that isn't about revenge, a path that doesn't end in emptiness, a choice that might lead somewhere other than the hollow victory I'm drowning in. The notification sound goes off again. I don't flinch this time. Small progress, maybe that's enough for today. I don't know if Owen ever went to that support group. I don't know if he found a way to rebuild his life into something meaningful. I don't know if he ever forgave Victor and Rachel, or if forgiveness was even possible, even
after everything that happened. What I know is this: betrayal changes you. It takes the person you were and breaks them into pieces. And revenge, even perfect, justified, completely executed revenge, doesn't put those pieces back together. It just gives you something to do while you're falling apart. Some people spend their whole lives chasing vindication. They win their battles and lose their souls. They destroy their enemies and discover they've destroyed themselves in the process. Some people find a way back. They build new relationships based on scars instead of innocence. They learn to trust again, carefully, with eyes wide open. They create meaning from wreckage. I don't know which path Owen took, but I know he had to choose. We all do eventually. When someone betrays us, when someone takes what we built and tries to erase our contribution, when someone we loved turns into someone we hate, we have to decide what matters more: justice or peace, revenge or healing,
being right or being whole. Owen chose revenge. It cost him everything. And somewhere in Seattle, sitting in a coffee shop with an unread email and an unfathomable choice, he might be learning that winning isn't the same as surviving. That destruction is easy, but building something new, building yourself new, is the hardest architecture of all.